Yeah, first technical session of this OTT conclave, which is about content, possibilities, constraints, and futures. I think we have had a very informative, insightful introductory lectures by both by the CEO of K4 and also MG Radhakrishnan. And this session, I think, is the most probably something that concerns us all, content. So we say content is king. And at the end of the day, we would like to know who makes this content, for whom, and who carries it. So as we said earlier, like we already had a lot of inputs about the kind of revolution that OTT has already created in terms of its coverage, in terms of its global penetration, in terms of its subscription coverage, geographical spread. So the question, I would like to just flag certain areas of concern, which I think the speakers who are part of the industry, who have been grappling with the change over in technology from their own perspectives, from the industry experience, they will respond to it and also take this the whole issue further. So one thing is about is this global spread. For the first time, I think if in this global revolution of this, especially since COVID created a kind of a huge door for OTT platforms to enter homes all over the world. And also, if in the Indian context, switching over to e-learning, e-education also opened the doors to, in a way, indirectly to OTT platforms, in the sense that every homes get connected because there is someone who is a learner at home, a student at home. So you have to essentially get digital connections. You get into you enter the web, which is also a kind of gateway for OTT to enter. So this COVID period has actually created a kind of huge opportunity for OTTs to enter market, which is evident. Like if you look at the visual consumption for the last 2 years, you can see this huge kind of popularity of OTT platforms and content. For instance, like this, MG Radhakrishnan is actually quoting a lot of data about its penetration and the kind of revenue that it is generating. For instance, like Netflix has around 223 million subscribers all over the world, and out of which actually 36.23 million are supposed to be from APAC region, like Asia Pacific region. Amazon again 117 million paid subscribers worldwide, of which 13.6 million subscribers are from India. Likewise, Z is supposed to have 48.11 million paid subscribers. So, but if you look at from the other angle, like for a country like India, which is about 1.4 billion population and about 300 million households, these coverages may look very meager in a sense. The penetration is not even crossing 20% or something around that. So there is a kind of opportunity out there. But the question is, how is it going to actually affect content? Will it be like, the inclusion of geographies, inclusion of cultures, regions into the OTT network? Is it actually going to provide us with diverse content? Is plurality of the proliferation of OTT platforms going to transform itself into proliferation and diversity of content? Is one question we may be interested to ask. Basically, because if you look at the experience of television, it has not been the case. Actually, what has happened is it is more of the same. Even the timings, even the content, even the mode of delivery, body language, everything has been the same. So it has not actually proliferation need not mean diversity of content, which is also related to something one could say like the whole global media industry. There's a huge level of centralization. 4 or 5 companies own the whole global media, covering film, newspapers, television, advertising, music, everything. So this level of concentration in ownership of media actually could transform into a kind of uniformity of content in terms of not only of content themes. It could also transform itself to a lot of uniformity in terms of aesthetics and also politics. So there is one question, maybe centralization is one question which could affect content. Second thing is like, how are nation states going to actually address this, the question of content? Because if you look at even the last 10 years of OTT, last few years of OTT in India today, you can see there are a lot of pressures to tweak content. Certain kind of content are not, favorable with the powers that be. So how are, these OTT providers, content providers going to actually deal with, negotiate with nation states is one thing that is, is going to affect the quality of content, the nature of content, the politics of content. So another question would be, what is happening to the regional content providers, regional television, regional cinemas, industries? Because once, unlike earlier, like when regional film industry or regional television industry had a safe or secure or defined market of their own, audience of their own, now it has, the global has actually penetrated into the global, so much so that the local is not able to talk to the local. The regional is unable to connect with the regional or local because they are already hooked to the global. So the whole change, the sea change that is happening in the everyday life, in the visual consumption of people, is actually taking away, creating a disconnect between regional producers and regional audience. So how is, so what is going to happen to regional content? Do they have any chance? How are they going to survive? How are they going to actually address this whole, the so-called emerging hegemony of OTT platforms? Is going to actually swamping, the whole, domain of television and film as such. Third thing could be like, is it going to create a kind of, so in terms of content, is it going to actually lead, just like centralization in terms of global media capital, is it actually going to create a certain sort of content, centralization, uniformity of content? Because, as we all know, like it is all about algorithms. It's also about algorithms, about what is being streamed, where, when, who is watching, the kind of demographic data relating to the content. So all this is going to in turn, tweak content, to calibrate content, which means, which has a huge problem with the aesthetics and politics of content. So how are we actually going to deal with this, like the whole algorithms at work of global media industry, to which the whole population, the whole, hitherto splintered, defined, regionalized, language-specific market is getting consolidated, becoming uniform, because becoming a global consumer. So how do you address, how does the regional, local, national address this global influx? Third thing could be like, is, for instance, every device, every platform creates its own audience. It creates its own market. It need not cut into the market of, for instance, the coming of OTT need not cut into the market of films or television. It can create, as we have seen, OTT has created an audience of its own, has created a market of its own. So what is happening in terms, if you look at the film field, you can see OTT films becoming a genre in itself, because people are producing films for OTT, not for theaters. So is it going to create a new kind of genres, new kinds of, is it actually giving an impetus to the local film industry to create certain kinds of films which are amenable to, which cater to the OTT market and demand? Or is it actually eating into local film production and industry as such? Lastly, there is this question of flows. If you look at, as I said, even now this kind of digital divide exists. There is this division, or there is this whole huge population out there who are not connected, who are not smart in that sense. And also like these flows which the new internet communication systems have opened up in terms of global communication, where you can have equal flows from the centers of production to the margins, or from the, to use the very conventional kind of term, the first world to the third world. If you look at the kind of content that flows through these platforms and this whole internet economy, you can see this content, the flow of content has not been equal. It has been one way. There is a kind of swamping being happening where the flows are towards the margins, and there is no, actually the regions don't talk back to the global. So how do we actually address that issue? Lastly, the question of whether there is actually a level playing field for local television, for local content providers, for local OTT platforms, because even Kerala government is thinking of creating an OTT platform of their own. And already in Kerala there are a lot of alternate OTT platforms for cinemas, art cinema, serious cinema and all that. So are we going to have a situation where to push to sustain a local regional economy, industry, entertainment or visual industry, are you going to have to create your own niche platforms? Is it going to create a kind of situation, a kind of situation where you have different niche kind of OTT platforms provide specific kind of content, or is it going to be very, very difficult for regional and local cinemas and industries and television and OTT providers to exist? I think these are some of the questions which this panel could throw light upon and discuss, in which we can also participate. We have very eminent speakers who are in the industry to talk about it. B. Unnikishan needs no introduction. He has been part of film industry as a creator and also as a kind of person who fights for, who's a spokesperson of the industry as such. Then you have Mohammed Mustafa and also Prakash Bare talking about it from different perspectives. So I would like to invite B. Unnikishan first. We think we'll have a kind of 20-minute each presentation, 20 minutes for each speaker. Then we'll have some time for Q&A after